The taste of copper filled my mouth as my father slid the crisp dollar bill across the mahogany table. Around me, champagne glasses clinked in celebration while my sister Emma counted zeros on a check that could buy 3 houses. The lawyer's voice had just finished announcing the will. Everything to Emma, nothing to me. But somehow the sound of my parents' laughter cut deeper than his words. "Go earn your own," my father said, his eyes already moving past me toward Emma's paperwork. My mother leaned back in her leather chair, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. "Some children just don't measure up." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white against the dark wood, as the room continued its celebration around my invisible presence. Then the lawyer cleared his throat and held up a sealed envelope. "There is one additional item, for Rebecca only." The laughter stopped. "My name is Rebecca. I'm 34 and a forensic accountant. This is the story of how I discovered my true inheritance." Growing up in the Morrison family meant learning to be grateful for scraps while watching Emma feast. Every family dinner followed the same script, Mom showcasing Emma's latest achievement while I cleared plates. Dad planning Emma's future while assigning me household chores. "You're steady, Becca," he'd say, as if steady meant invisible. The only person who saw me differently was Grandpa Henry. Saturday mornings at his lake cabin were my sanctuary, just us, fishing poles, and conversations that treated my thoughts as worth hearing. "People look at the surface," he'd tell me, watching ripples spread across the water, "but the real current runs underneath." When he passed last month, I felt more than grief. I felt abandoned by the last person who acknowledged I existed. That's why sitting in that lawyer's office felt like the final verdict on my worth. 24 years of being the family afterthought, officially stamped and witnessed. The sealed envelope sat heavy in my hands as I drove home through the late afternoon traffic. Inside my apartment that evening, I tore it open with shaking fingers. A key fell onto my coffee table, followed by a handwritten note. "Rebecca, start where truth was buried. The study cabinet, love, Grandpa Henry." I stared at those words for 10 minutes, my investigative instincts finally awakening from years of family-induced dormancy. Grandpa Henry had been a successful businessman before retirement. He'd never explained why he'd sold his company so suddenly 15 years ago, or why he'd seemed distant from my parents afterward. The next morning, I drove the 40 minutes to his lake cabin. My parents' cars were already there. Of course they were, cataloging assets like vultures. I parked down the road and waited until they left for lunch, then let myself in with the spare key he'd given me years ago. Moving quietly through the familiar rooms, I made my way to his study. The study felt sacred, untouched by yesterday's chaos. I found the cabinet beneath his desk, a steel lockbox I'd seen him touch countless times but never open. The key slid in perfectly. Inside were folders labeled by year, going back 2 decades. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. Bank statements, business correspondence, and highlighted payments that made my forensic accountant brain start connecting dots I wished I couldn't see. My parents hadn't just been his financial advisors. They'd systematically advised him into deals that benefited them while stripping him of control. Round payments just under reporting thresholds. Asset transfers that coincidentally aligned with their investment portfolio. Legal documents bearing my father's law firm letterhead, steering Grandpa Henry toward decisions that somehow always left him with less. I photographed every page, my training taking over as I documented the paper trail. But it was the last folder that stopped me cold. A recording device, still functional with a note. "Rebecca, I trusted them because they were family. Don't make the same mistake. Press play when you're ready to hear how trust dies." I pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, recorded during what sounded like a family dinner. "The old man won't last much longer. Once he's gone, we can restructure everything properly. Emma gets the inheritance, we maintain control of his assets through the advisory agreements, and Rebecca..." Laughter. "Rebecca gets whatever keeps her quiet and out of the way." My mother's voice chimed in. "She's never been bright enough to question anything anyway." More laughter. Emma's voice. "As long as she doesn't interfere with my plans." I sat in Grandpa Henry's chair, staring at the device that had just shattered the last of my illusions. They hadn't just overlooked me, they'd conspired to erase me. But Grandpa Henry had been recording everything. That evening, back at my apartment, I called Emma. "We need to talk, all of us, tomorrow at the cabin." "Becca, if this is about the will..." "Just be there, 10 a.m. The next morning, I arrived at the cabin an hour early and set up Grandpa Henry's old projector in the living room. My parents entered first, Dad checking his watch impatiently. "Rebecca, whatever this is about, we don't have time for dramatics." Emma followed, looking annoyed. "Seriously, Becca, you got your $1. What more do you want?" "I want you to listen," I said, pressing play on the recording device. Their own voices filled the room, the conspiratorial laughter, the casual dismissal, the admission of their systematic theft disguised as financial advice. Dad went pale. Mom's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Emma stared at the device like it might bite her. "Where did you get this?" Dad demanded. "From the man you stole from," I said, advancing the projector to the first document. "Let me show you exactly how much." For the next hour, I walked them through 15 years of financial manipulation. Every rounded payment, every asset transfer, every piece of advice that coincidentally benefited them while impoverishing the man who trusted them. The numbers projected on the wall told a story of systematic family betrayal that made my single dollar look generous in comparison. "This is all circumstantial," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," I said, "but it's also evidence of financial elder abuse. And since Grandpa Henry recorded everything, including your admissions of intent, I think the state attorney general might find it compelling." Mom stood abruptly. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." I pulled out my phone and held up a thumb drive, "unless you'd prefer to make this right voluntarily." The room went silent except for the tick of Grandpa Henry's old clock. Emma spoke first, her voice small. "What do you want?" "I want you to return what you stole. Every asset transfer, every advisory fee, every dollar you took from a man who trusted you because you were family." I looked at each of them in turn. "And I want you to understand that the inheritance isn't yours to give or withhold. Grandpa Henry already gave me mine." Dad's shoulders sagged. "The foundation?" "The charitable foundation he established 6 months before he died, the Morrison Educational Trust, which I now chair as his designated successor, the one that controls all his real assets, not just the property and cash you thought were everything." I smiled, feeling Grandpa Henry's presence in the room. "The foundation that will receive every dollar you stole, plus interest, to fund scholarships for overlooked students. Congratulations, you conspired to steal from a man who'd already given away everything that mattered to the person who'd actually earn it." 2 weeks later, after consulting with the state attorney general's office, we reached a settlement agreement. My parents' advisory fees were returned in full, $847,000 over 15 years. The manipulated investments were unwound, recovering an additional $312,000. Emma kept her trust fund, minus the $75,000 she'd knowingly accepted from questionable transfers. The lake cabin, Grandpa Henry's real gift to me, was legally transferred through his personal will, separate from the foundation assets. My parents made no attempt to contact me after signing the settlement. Emma sent one text. "I hope you're happy." I deleted it without responding. They had made their choice about what I was worth to them long before I discovered the truth. I spend weekends at the lake now, sitting on the dock where Grandpa Henry taught me to see beneath the surface. The water reflects everything honestly. Sunlight and shadows, truth and lies, the ripples that spread when something real disturbs the fake calm. Sometimes families aren't who you think they are. Sometimes the person who truly loves you is the one who prepares you to stand alone. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the strength to demand the truth, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. If your family has ever made you feel invisible, you're not alone. Trust your instincts about who values you, and don't be afraid to demand the respect you've always deserved. The people who truly love you will never ask you to earn what should be freely given. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.